Yeah, he had a great run, and it's fun to watch. I think I watched Indiana State and Iowa, Caitlyn Clark play about the same last year, so I was watching a lot of basketball.
The basketball world just stopped breathing. I'm talking about a moment so shocking, so completely out of left field, that even the most seasoned WNBA analysts are scrambling to make sense of what just happened. Stephanie White, the coach who was supposed to guide the Indiana Fever through their golden era with Caitlyn Clark, has just been fired. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Her replacement isn't just any coach. It's Larry Bird. Yes, you heard that right. The Larry Bird. And when Caitlyn Clark heard the news, she was left completely speechless. This isn't just a coaching change. Folks, this is basketball history being rewritten in real time. Picture this scene at Gainbridge Fieldhouse just moments ago. The arena was buzzing with its usual pregame energy, fans filing and expecting another electrifying Fever performance. The media was positioned courtside, cameras rolling for what they thought would be routine team updates. Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, saw what was coming next. The atmosphere was typical, almost mundane, until Caitlyn Clark stepped up to that microphone. The moment she approached the podium, something shifted. You could feel in the air that electric tension that comes right before lightning strikes. The crowd noise began to fade, conversations died mid-sentence, and every single person in that arena seemed to sense that something monumental was about to happen. Even the seasoned reporters, who've covered countless press conferences and seen every possible twist in professional sports, leaned forward in their seats. Something in Clark's expression, something in the way she carried herself, told everyone that this wasn't going to be your average player announcement. When she finally spoke, her words hit the basketball world like a freight train at full speed. The Indiana Fever had made a coaching change that nobody saw coming, nobody predicted, and nobody was prepared for. This wasn't your typical mid-season adjustment or a mutual parting of ways. This was seismic. This was the kind of move that sends shockwaves through every level of professional basketball, from the front offices to the locker rooms to the living rooms of fans across the country. But here's what made it truly extraordinary. This wasn't just any replacement coach. The Fever didn't bring in another WNBA veteran or promote an assistant from within their system. They reached across basketball history and pulled in someone whose very name commands instant respect and attention. Someone whose presence alone would fundamentally change how people view not just the Fever, but the entire WNBA. The implications were staggering, and everyone in that arena knew they were witnessing something that would be talked about for decades. The questions started flying immediately, cascading through sports media networks like wildfire. How did the Indiana Fever manage to pull off such an unprecedented move? What kind of behind-the-scenes negotiations have been happening while the rest of the basketball world remained completely oblivious? Social media exploded within minutes, with analysts, former players, and fans all trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The ripple effects were already beginning, and it was clear that this decision would reshape conversations about coaching, player empowerment, and the future direction of women's professional basketball. To understand why this moment is so revolutionary, you have to understand what Caitlyn Clark has become in less than one full WNBA season. She isn't just a talented rookie who's putting up impressive numbers. She's a cultural phenomenon who has single-handedly transformed the Indiana Fever from a struggling franchise into the most talked-about team in women's professional sports. When Clark stepped onto that court for the first time as a professional, she didn't just start playing basketball. She started rewriting the entire playbook for what a WNBA star could accomplish. The numbers tell an incredible story, but they don't capture the full magnitude of Clark's impact. Season ticket sales for the Fever skyrocketed by over 400%. Think about that for a moment. In professional sports, increasing attendance by even 20 or 30% is considered a massive success. Clark quadrupled that impact in her rookie season. Gainbridge Fieldhouse, which used to have entire sections of empty seats during games, transformed into one of the most electric venues in all of professional basketball. Fans weren't just showing up to watch games anymore. They were coming to witness history in the making. But Clark's influence extends far beyond just filling seats. Corporate sponsors who had never considered partnering with WNBA teams suddenly found themselves in bidding wars to associate with the Fever brand. Local businesses saw immediate benefits from the increased foot traffic and media attention. National brands recognized that aligning with Clark meant reaching audiences they'd never been able to connect with through traditional WNBA partnerships. The team's financial profile rose so dramatically that other franchises started studying what the Fever were doing differently. Social media amplified every single moment of Clark's impact. Her highlight reels weren't just being shared by basketball fans. They were going viral across all demographics, reaching people who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives. Mainstream media coverage followed, with major networks featuring Clark in primetime segments that treated her like the superstar she had become. In less than one season, she evolved from a highly touted college player to a cultural icon whose influence reached far beyond the basketball court. What truly sets Clark apart in professional sports is the unprecedented level of organizational influence she's managed to achieve. Most rookies, no matter how talented, spend their first years learning systems and adapting to veteran leadership. Clark flipped that dynamic completely. Her star power and cultural impact gave her a voice in major franchise decisions, including conversations about coaching philosophy and team strategy. The Fever stopped being just a basketball team trying to win games. They became an extension of Clark's vision for what the franchise could accomplish. This brings us to the coaching situation that led to today's explosive announcement. Stephanie White, by all accounts, is an accomplished basketball coach with a solid track record. But accomplished doesn't always mean compatible. And what became increasingly clear throughout the season was that White's coaching philosophy and Clark's playing style were fundamentally misaligned. This wasn't about competence or credentials. It was about basketball DNA and whether two approaches to the game could coexist successfully. Clark had been remarkably candid about these challenges in recent interviews, particularly during a revealing conversation on a podcast where she opened up about feeling restricted within White's system. She described posting elite numbers, 32 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds in single games, while simultaneously feeling like her natural instincts were being stifled. For a player whose greatest strength is her ability to read and react to game situations in real time, being asked to play within rigid parameters was like asking a jazz musician to only play classical compositions. The specific examples Clark shared painted a picture of philosophical differences that went to the core of how basketball should be played. She talked about moments when her instinct told her to make aggressive, high IQ plays that could break games open, only to be coached towards safer, more conservative decisions. There were instances where she felt she could have extended leads or energize the crowd through calculated risks, but found herself being pulled back or criticized for the very creativity that made her special. One particularly telling example involved a fourth quarter situation where Clark committed a turnover while trying to make a game-changing play. Instead of being encouraged to trust her instincts, she was immediately benched for what White described as a learning moment. For Clark, these teaching moments felt like they were disrupting the natural flow that allowed her to impact games at the highest level. Basketball, in her view, isn't about minimizing mistakes. It's about maximizing opportunities and trusting elite players to make elite decisions. The philosophical divide became even more apparent in how games were managed during crucial moments. White's approach often emphasized clock management and protecting leads through conservative play calling. Clark's instincts pushed toward continuing to attack, finding open teammates and putting points on the board when opportunities presented themselves. The result was a style of play that Clark felt didn't fully capitalize on her abilities or provide the kind of entertainment value that fans deserved. At the heart of these conflicts was White's apparent attempt to mold Clark into a different type of player entirely. Clark felt like she was being pushed toward a more reserved, fundamental approach similar to players like Paige Buecher's, when her greatest strengths came from improvisation, creative decision-making, and fearless playmaking. For a generational talent whose success was built on thinking differently about basketball, being asked to conform to traditional models felt counterproductive. Enter Larry Bird, a name that instantly changes every conversation about basketball excellence. When you mention Bird in any basketball context, you're talking about someone whose credentials speak before he even enters the room. 3 NBA championships, 3 most valuable player awards, 12 All-Star selections, and decades of success as both a coach and executive. But Bird's impact on basketball goes far beyond the statistics and accolades. He represents a level of basketball intelligence and competitive fire that defined an entire era of the sport. Bird's connection to Indiana runs deeper than most people realize. This isn't just a legendary player taking on a coaching role. This is someone whose basketball DNA was forged in the heart of Indiana basketball culture. Growing up in French Lick, a small town where basketball wasn't just a sport, but a way of life, Bird developed the work ethic, vision, and relentless competitiveness that would make him one of the greatest players in NBA history. His journey through Indiana State University became the stuff of legend, culminating in that unforgettable 1979 NCAA championship game against Magic Johnson that many consider the moment college basketball truly entered the mainstream consciousness. After his playing career ended, Bird proved that his basketball intelligence translated seamlessly into leadership roles. As a coach with the Indiana Pacers, he led the team to consecutive Eastern Conference Finals appearances, demonstrating an ability to manage elite talent while implementing strategic systems that maximized each player's strengths. His transition into executive roles showed yet another dimension of his basketball expertise, as he helped craft long-term organizational strategies that position franchises for sustained success. What makes Bird's potential involvement with the WNBA so fascinating is that it represents completely uncharted territory. This would be the first time his legendary expertise would be applied to women's professional basketball, bringing decades of strategic brilliance and leadership experience to a league that's hungry for exactly this kind of credibility and attention. Bird's presence wouldn't just be symbolic. It would represent a bridge between basketball generations and a blending of historic knowledge with contemporary talent. The partnership between Larry Bird and Caitlyn Clark has the potential to be absolutely revolutionary, both on and off the basketball court. Imagine Bird's treasure trove of basketball wisdom. His understanding of strategy, fundamentals, and game management, combined with Clark's extraordinary natural gifts, court vision, and ability to orchestrate game flow. Every practice session would become a masterclass in basketball excellence, with each play being executed with a level of intelligence and creativity that fans rarely get to witness. But the impact of this collaboration extends far beyond what happens during games. The media coverage alone would be unprecedented, with national broadcasts, social media, and print journalism all converging on the Fever to document this historic partnership. Every game would become must-watch television, drawing attention not just to the team, but to the WNBA as a whole. Corporate sponsors, recognizing the massive potential for visibility and engagement, would rush to align themselves with this story, bringing investment opportunities that the league has never seen before. The long-term implications could be even more significant. The Fever would have the platform to develop enduring programs in player development, youth training, and community outreach that extend their influence far beyond professional basketball. They could become a symbol of innovation and leadership in women's sports, inspiring a generation of young athletes to see the WNBA not just as a place to play basketball, but as a platform for cultural influence and positive change. This decision represents something much larger than basketball strategy or even sports entertainment. It's a statement that coaching expertise and leadership transcend traditional boundaries, that knowledge and insight can lift any game to extraordinary heights regardless of conventional expectations. Bird's involvement sends a clear message that greatness in sports knows no limitations, proving that experience, innovation, and competitive excellence can find new expressions in any arena. Equally important is what this means for Caitlyn Clark's evolution as not just a player, but as a cultural force. Her influence has already stretched far beyond her on-court performances, turning her into someone whose voice carries weight in organizational decisions that were once unimaginable for any player, let alone a rookie. Clark isn't just a star athlete anymore. She's become a catalyst for change, a driving force capable of reshaping entire organizations from the inside out. Together, Clark and Bird represent the convergence of basketball history and modernity, where raw talent blends with seasoned expertise and athletic excellence intersects with commercial opportunity. Their partnership is an audacious experiment that challenges traditional hierarchies and reimagines what a professional sports team can achieve when boldness and innovation take center stage. The ripple effects of this alliance will be felt throughout the sports world. television ratings could reach levels that redefine what's possible for women's professional basketball. Social media engagement is positioned to break records, and corporate partnerships may flourish in ways that create new models for how sports franchises operate. Each game has the potential to become a cultural event, a stage for strategic brilliance and forward-thinking leadership that entertains while also educating fans about what elite basketball looks like. Other WNBA teams will be watching closely, studying this approach to leadership, strategy, and player empowerment. The Fever have moved beyond being participants in the league. They've become pioneers, showing what the future of women's professional basketball can look like when traditional limitations are cast aside in favor of bold vision and unprecedented partnerships. This is the beginning of a new era where history, talent, ambition, and strategy collide to create something that transcends sports entertainment. The Indiana Fever aren't just chasing victories on the scoreboard anymore. They're redefining the very possibilities of their league and setting a precedent that could inspire generations of players, coaches, and executives to dream bigger and challenge every assumption about what's possible in professional sports. The basketball world will never be the same,